And we have participants up. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
For the video conference people, you know how this works. So if you want to be able to put your microphone on mute when we're in session, and then put it on mute when we're not in session. For webinar, if you want to say anything, you have access to a keyboard in front of you. That's how we're going to be able to talk to you. So if you want to go through and tell us who you are or what nation you're from, you can go ahead and do that. As you know, I'm Lena Menifee, and I'm from Gehachla. I'm British. I'm Gitswood from the House of Weeda Lee, which is up on the BC coast, near kind of Alaska BC coast. And I have Ryan McMahon today. Everybody laughing.
Hello.
We're really excited to have you here. This is one of our last episodes. We are actually on Coast Salish, I just want to say unceded territory of Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. We're happy to be here in downtown Vancouver. We're at the offices here of Davie and Hornby. If you guys ever want to come down and check us out or come on a webinar. We've been running for 7 years, and this year we're part of a huge group at UBC, which is the new Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health. It's almost going on a 1-year anniversary, as well as with First Nations Health Authority, and so this is how we're able to do these webinars. We try to cover Indigenous health issues, so anything mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and hopefully we'll be hitting all those today.
We will hit all of those today, yes.
And if you wanted to maybe just give us a little intro about who you are and
Sure.
what you do, and then I'll
Sure.
give my thank yous to everybody in the room after.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan McMahon. I'm Anishinaabe and Métis, originally from Treaty 3 territory in northwestern Ontario. I'm currently based out of Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm a professional comedian, writer, and actor, and basically I do comedy for a living. I tour North America doing my own original shows, but I also teach workshops with youth leadership and empowerment workshops, using art and theater specifically as empowerment and cultural tools to help bring leaders out of the youth who are, of course, already leaders, but to draw that out of them in a stronger, more present way, using basically life skills programming, but without any paper. And so I balance my time between performing and teaching, and I do a lot of volunteer work as well. I do fundraisers, raise money for scholarships at universities and high schools, and basically do anything I can to give back, because I think art is selfish sometimes. And in that selfish kind of chase of being a professional artist, it's really easy to get lost inside of that. And so, giving back and volunteering and raising money for communities and doing things like that is very important.
Yeah. Thank you. And so we do have role models on, so I'd consider you one of our role models that we're having visit us. And thank you for making time. I know you only have a very short time in Vancouver. For visiting us today. We're not going to do anything formal. There's no PowerPoints. Like you said, there's going to be no paper today. It's just going to be us dialoguing. So this is a very, very good opportunity to talk to Ryan and get to kind of chat at him, and us to ask you some questions too. So with that, I wanted to talk about kind of the premise of Native humor and Native comedy in our communities.
Yeah, well, of course, so I have a degree in theater. I went to university, college, and then university, and got a degree in theater. Majored in acting, minored in directing and playwriting. And after I left theater school, I moved to Toronto and sort of chased my dreams as an actor. And that's when I really discovered comedy. Was while I was in Toronto, and obviously, looking at me, I'm not exactly the Dances with Wolves type, So coming out of theater school, I discovered right away that they weren't going to be throwing me on a horseback anytime soon, because there were no chubby warriors back in the day, I don't think. So,
Topless and barefoot.
yeah, I mean, very, very angry horse. How'd I end up with the chubby guy? So I never really thought about my path until I got to Toronto, and that's when I discovered that things were going to be a little bit different. I'm in these audition rooms with Adam Beach and Nathaniel Arcan and Lorne Cardinal and all these beautiful, brown, stunning men, and then there's me. So I discovered right away, actually, that my path was going to be quite different. But I did spend a couple of years spinning my wheels, with a manager and an agent. Fresh out of theater school, a young native actor that was actually trained to be an actor, that just didn't have cheekbones and braids, was a pretty hot commodity. So I got a lot of work, but but I didn't fit the roles that were available, and so I started to have to write my own material, and I started writing more monologues and short plays and these types of things. And just by luck, was walking home from seeing a comedy show one night near the end of 1999, and I saw a poster on a telephone pole for the Second City, and there was auditions for the Conservatory, and I just decided to go all in, and I auditioned for the Conservatory at the Second City.
And did you know what Second City was about? Because I kind of am a big comedy fan. So did you know?
I knew Second City was like the breeding ground for Saturday Night Live players. Mm-hmm. I knew that every major Saturday Night Live player went through Second City. It's still true to this day. Yeah. I knew that much, but I didn't know what training at the Conservatory would mean or what it would be like. And once I signed up to audition, they actually said no because I didn't have the improv theater background. And but I did have a theater background, so I petitioned my way in. I begged my way in, and I think they just relented. They just kind of like, come on, okay, fine, you can come at 3:00. And I went in there and I just blew the room apart. I took big risks. I've always been a big risk taker on stage, and I ended up getting a full scholarship to attend. So that was actually the big thing, is I wasn't going to be able to pay for it. Once I looked at the tuition, I thought that dream was over, but I got a full scholarship to attend, and and that 2 years of training on stage 3 or 4 days a week, just hundreds of shows in 2 years, and really honing my voice and what I thought was funny. But immediately found out again, it seems like in my career I've made goals and I've reached those goals only to find there's nothing there for me. And at Second City, I had no, I'm good. But I had my eyes set on the National Touring Company, and I was pitching sketches in my grad show, and one of the sketches that I had pitched was a sketch about bringing Jean Chrétien into a sweat lodge, and making him, basically scaring him straight, and making him apologize for the white paper and everything. And I thought it was hilarious. And I pitched this sketch for months in the rehearsal room, and I would just bring new ideas and new ways I thought it would be funny, and there were no laughs. Nobody wanted to develop it with me, and that's when I realized the people I was surrounded myself with had never even seen a sweat lodge, never mind knew what I was referencing. So again, reached a level or attained a goal, but found there was nothing there for me. And that's when I really committed myself to finding out what was funny to me, and sort of what native humor was. So that's what set me on the path. Was basically I'd worked too hard and come too far to turn around, and I had to figure it out. So got turned on to the storytellers like Basil Johnston and Drew Hayden Taylor and a couple other people that were using comedy. through storytelling, and just kind of stumbled my way through, finding out what was funny. Fast forward 10 years, to 2014 now, certainly have a better grasp of what comedy means to us in our communities, and what it meant to us historically, and what it means to individual nations, and all through Turtle Island, that use trickster figures or these types of figures to tell stories and to teach. So.
What does it mean to you? What does it mean
Uh,
to you and your community?
Yeah, I think comedy in my community, for Anishinaabe people, we have Nanabuju, our trickster figure, and there are many stories that are, rather than grounding or putting our kids in naughty corner, we didn't really have that. We would sit our kids down, we'd tell them stories, and there was a way that we used stories to give information, to present choices to young people and to community members, and they revolve around governance. They revolve around our laws. They revolve around integral pieces of our communities as a whole, and so when we say laughter is medicine, I understand why that is said, but I kind of also reject that because it is so much more. It holds our law. It holds our histories. The comedy that we've used is millennia old, so it's an important piece.
It's kind of
I think
reaches,
for our communities,
reaches everything. Maybe we want to throw it to the audience right now. Do you have any tricksters in your communities that you want to share, or is there anything that you can kind of tell us about humor in your communities? Because we have different people representing here. If you want to type it in a webinar, you can. If you want to be on video conference, you could unmute your button. So Madeline here says, I don't know if I'm going to get it right, but Senclip the coyote, which is true. And Simshan, it's raven. And there's always a counterbalance, too. So the trickster's raven, but then eagle is that counterbalance of wisdom and, kind of knowledge and calmness. Thanks, Madeline. Is there any questions for Ryan at this moment? Or I'm gonna continue on with.
Well, I was also going to say too. I mean, even where contemporary forms of performance come in, like vaudeville, you can look at even the court jester and these types. They were always used as a way of giving power back to the people, and I think that's really important to note about comedy and our humor, is that it was never meant to take our power. We shouldn't be using comedy as a weapon against our own people, or we shouldn't be taking from our own people. We should be using it to give back to our people. So Charlie Hill, who was my mentor and one of my best friends, he always talked about comedy sort of being a mirror, in the face of society. And so what you did through comedy was you showed people, you showed them who they were, for better or worse. And so there are teachable moments through comedy too that become very important when you flip that mirror around and show people how they're acting or what they're doing. And that always stuck with me too, is that idea of the mirror kind of showing people, who they are.
It's an important role in community, and a sacred role in some communities too. So I was just living in Santa Fe, going to IAIA, and the idea of sacred clown down there and is huge. Those are always teachable moments. That's why they interact with community.
Yeah, and there's different versions of it for us too. The clown dance, even at the powwow, there were different figures like that would come into ceremony as well. There's a lot of different ways that this has been used, and I don't always hear about it. It's one of those things that kind of I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think it's one that is important and one that we can have more often. And this is one small piece of the rebuilding that we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when we talk about I don't know more and these things, you know, it's certainly not what it was 2 years ago, but it's changed, and now these types of conversations are happening again, and we can put these pieces back in place.
Yeah.
You know, and so this is one, I think, in my estimation, if I could generalize, I think is one that has been missing for a while, and one that we can sort of look at putting back in place in our communities. Yeah.
There's stories from my area too of having certain monsters that were half funny and half scary. So apparently there's like a snot monster.
Oh yeah.
That was like used in ceremony in potlatches as well, and that monster would throw his snot on people. And scare the children.
I've been known to throw snot. I've been known to. It's an important teacher, I think, and my best teachers, whether they were, you know, comedians or not, were all very humorous. Mm-hmm. And we're all storytellers, and that's the thing, is that some of us found a way to get paid for it, and it almost feels dirty, because we're all funny, we're all storytellers, we're all, at our core, we all love to share with each other. That's how we teach each other too. And and I think that, you know, it's really important that we continue to share stories. It's really important that we continue to share that way, because I think we go further faster when we personalize these things and we learn from each other. Yeah.
Do you reference a lot of the cultural knowledge within your humor? Is there things that you kind of go to, or do you use kind of the trickster? Do you embody that, or do you bring it in some way? Somebody was asking about the role of trickster, so I think maybe we can go a little more deeper into.
When I write, when I write and I'm trying to talk about something, I put myself inside of the thing, so I never stand outside of it and point. Mm-hmm. So it's always personal first, and I connect to the thing that I want to write about, but I use both sides, and so I think that's what I've learned through Trickster Stories or Nana Bourgeois, is that there are two sides, and it's about balance. And so if you really want to go comedy nerd, download my album for free. It's on the internet for free. And then
you can say the name of the album too.
It's called The Shittiest Warrior.
Yeah. And we can give you the link afterwards.
Yeah, we can put the links up and stuff.
If we want to just Google it, actually.
But there's duality in everything, in every joke I tell, and that's on purpose, and that's intentional. I never want to tell you how to think or how to feel, but I want you to think about the two sides. And so if I've learned anything through those stories and through that way of being, it is that
Sorry.
Oh, can people hear that?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, we had a dance party going. But yeah, there's duality in everything I write, and for me that's the key takeaway. That's the teacher inside of all of those stories for me.
When you talk about pointing to yourself, that gives a lot of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. How do you get to that place of making fun of yourself and being that vulnerable in front of thousands of people and audiences?
Yeah. I have to be vulnerable to do my job, because I think that it's the responsibility I have, or the responsibility anybody has when people are sitting and looking at you, and they're not allowed to talk, so you're allowed to talk. That's a place of privilege that shouldn't be abused, and you should recognize the privilege therein. So, and therefore, I think you should present yourself. You should be sharing yourself. And for me, the best comedy is it peels back the layers to show the real human experience that we all have. And the next hour of comedy that I'm writing is all about religion, and it's all about residential school and the way religion has seeped its way into our communities, for better or worse.
So not all religions, not like the world over, but just specifically our relationship with.
I would say our relationship with the church.
And colonial.
Yeah, and sort of the colonial structures.
How do you write around that, man? That's very, very difficult to make people laugh to talk about residential school.
Well, I just did a Christmas show, so here's a comedy. I just did a Christmas show, and that'll be the last Christmas show I ever do, because I can't do a Christmas show and not talk about virgin births and the hypocrisy of the church and the way it's the colonial impacts of it, the way we've rejected the two spirits in our community, the way the church treats those people in our community. The impacts on it are too big to not talk about, and I'm not an entertainer. I discovered that, and at this Christmas show a couple of weeks ago, it's just a lighthearted joke about. Have you done your Christmas shopping? Huh? Yeah, everyone excited. Everyone cheers. Yeah, we did our Christmas. Yay! What'd you get Jesus for his birthday? Oh. Oh my God! How could you? Just saying words, just the idea, by me saying that's what it's actually about. That's what Christmas is supposed to be about. The dude's birthday.
Is the baby Jesus?
That's the baby Jesus.
Yeah.
What'd you get him for his birthday? Oh, he said Jesus. And it's just like we are in not only just in our community but in general in society. We're in this time where you can't say things, where you have to be careful, and from there the opening of like, what'd you get Jesus for his birthday? I bet you I know what he'd want, and just that simple comedy premise, and that's 5 minutes into my show. I have an hour. It just went from like just a slow, painful death. And
is this one of your hardest shows that you've done? Is it one of the harder?
Yes and no. I did it intentionally because I probably could have put on my dancing shoes for everybody and entertained for an hour, but I'm writing more true to who I am. If I keep all of this in, I don't know what to do with it. So, and I think like artists, for comedy gets treated very differently than film, than visual art, than photography, than any other artistic medium. Comedy is one of those ones where you specifically can't talk about things, but in film you can show things.
Without talking,
you can show it. But if I bring up certain topics or certain themes, I'm a bad person, or I'm on the wrong side of people, and I can't avoid it anymore. I'm too old, first of all, and I hate leaving the stage feeling like I haven't said what I wanted to say, and I do think it's just time to have some really difficult conversations through comedy that I feel like are valuable conversations, not for the sake of making people feel uncomfortable at Christmas, not for the sake of ruining someone's staff Christmas party, but for the sake of, for me, exploring these things that have never been said before on stage.
So there's lots of, I just came from, you're going to have to say his name for me.
Hari Kondabolu.
Harry Kondabolu, and also Sean Devereaux, who did the piece, and he actually had a residential school piece on Friday at the comedy show. He opened up for Hari, and he made people laugh talking about residential school. I was like, I didn't think it was possible. And so, and Hari's is like educating people in the audience as well as making them laugh about race and race relations and how it can be funny, these awkward spaces and like these terrible stories that affect your life. So how do you pull from those moments, and how are you going to talk about them? Is there anything that you specifically want to address as like sort of race relations, or?
I don't know. I think when I think that's the importance of coming at it from a personal space. My own experience with the church, I was an altar boy until fourth grade, at which point I just rejected fear. I'm not going to fear God. I don't want to fear him. I don't want to fear this thing that is supposed to decide whether I'm going to be with my family when it's all said and done. Like, it was just too much, and I was at 8. So that's a personal story, and I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about the way fear-based practices have found their way into our communities through our own ceremonies, right? The way that fear controls our people, the way that fear will control a chief and council, the way that fear will control the decisions that we make inside of our households, inside of our communities. And so I think that, and maybe that's not the only place. It sounds like I'm railing on the church here. Don't tune out, people. I'm not just speaking about the church, but specifically in this writing that I'm doing now, that's kind of where I'm sitting with it. And so, all this new stuff that I'm writing is all just personal thoughts and experiences on this. And I think that we're too afraid to have the conversation, so I'd like to say, this is how I feel, how does everyone else feel? And this will either go really well for me, or it will be the end of it all for me.
I wouldn't put that much pressure.
Well, no, but I that's what I want it to be. I want it to be. I don't want to feel afraid anymore, and I don't want to feel afraid of my own people anymore.
Censored? Do you feel censored by your own people, outside people, yourself?
I feel censored by myself. Okay. I don't think anybody censors me, but I do feel that I'm not comfortable saying some things or thinking some things, and therefore when I'm on stage I won't say them or I won't write them, and that's not who I am, because I say things all the time. And if I say it, I mean it. So, but in this little niche market that we have as artists, you have to worry about whether, Stolo Health is going to hire me at Christmas, right? This is how you start to think, is like, well, if I write that show about religion, will I get a gig next month to pay my mortgage? And if I'm on the wrong side of people, can I take care of my kids?
Your family.
If I start talking about this stuff, which way does it go? And as somebody that lives month to month or check to check as an artist, there's that danger. And so we're changing from, like, we're discovering, I think, what native comedy is right now, or at least I am. And I would like to think that it's more than bingo and bannock jokes, and it could, because we are so much more. And I think that our young people demand more than that. I think our communities demand and deserve more than that. I think that it's just a good time to figure it out.
Can we talk about your family more? You said that, you have 2 daughters,
mm-hmm.
and I've met one of them. She's a little angel.
In Regina. Yeah. Drove through a snowstorm to come to
perform for Sagewa. Thank you for doing that.
No, but they're both little curious little artists too.
How do you use it? How do you use your humor with your kids at home?
It's just it's a good way in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we all do it as parents. I'm sure that we all kind of, especially as they get older, you kind of want to stay cool. You kind of want to, hey, Dad's wacky. Tell me about the boy that called you. So it is fun. But yeah, we have a lot of serious conversations. We have a lot. Last night, I was talking to my oldest daughter about treaty, because she has to do a presentation on Aboriginal rights, and why Aboriginal people have special rights in Canada. And a lot of her best friends have really been, I mean, they're 11, and these little devils are really crazy with their racism already, you know. And so we had a big long conversation about treaty, and then I actually showed her a piece of my stand-up about white privilege, and explained to her as best I could what settler colonialism was, and why people feel entitled to certain things, and how that's played out just over 140 years, and how really it's the thing that she's going to be burdened with. So yeah, we go from silly to serious, and to silly
back to serious again.
Try to leave it at silly. I don't like them going to sleep with like, why was Dad his upper lip was shaking when he said the word settler colonialism. But yeah, I mean, it's I think like that's the difficulty too, is that with comedy there's a lot of anger. Yeah. There's a lot of anger in the work that I do, and it's trying to figure out how to channel that in a good way, through the work, but also through life. Because when you're writing, you don't just write and then turn it off, and then you're just like happy dad. You're just like, oh, I wish I could still write. But life, you have to live. You have to live. So yeah, it's all, I think, a difficult balancing act. Yeah, as far as like the real everyday process of doing comedy. Yeah.
And you bring some of your family experiences into your comedy too. I mean, is that something you've ever been conscious about, bringing your family in, your daughters? I know you have some jokes about your grandma too.
Yeah, I used to do more of it. I think I've got 5 hours of material now, and so I think the first couple of hours I wrote were like the really easy stuff. The crazy story about my grandma, or the crazy story about my kid, or it all comes easy. Those are the first jokes you write. But I tend not to do that anymore. I've said some things on stage about my family. I've had some jokes before about my parents that when I had some distance from them, I just really didn't like them.
It happens.
Yeah, and I thought it was I thought it was so funny, that I wrote this big joke about my parents not getting along, or whatever it was, and there was no reason for me to tell that. It was just an easy, cheap thing to say for laughs.
Cheap shot.
Yeah. It's like, why is the strange guy that we don't know up there crying around about his parents? Like, it gets weird. And that's what I've learned through comedy, again, is it has to be personal, but it's I think it's much more important to be very careful about the words you choose. It's very important to know exactly why you're saying what you want to say. I think that inside the context of your act, and each piece of your act, that there's a story or a narrative that comes through. Just like any good film or book, there's a beginning, middle, and an end. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but that something happens through the time you're on stage, and so you have to be very careful. And I'm still learning that, and I'm trying to get better at that, and I think that comes with time. But yeah, there have been some times where I've said things on stage about my family, or about things growing up, where I felt like I'm never going to say that again. Yeah.
There was a recent time when you kind of hit up against this, knowing the responsibility of your words, and had to kind of deal with it in a public way. You want to talk about
Sure.
taking responsibility as a comedian for things you say and growing?
Sure. Well, there's two instances, two big ones, two big moments where I've been called out for some things that have happened. One thing that happened on stage, a joke that I wrote, and another instance where I tweeted something and I was called out for that. The first one on stage, I have a joke about dressing up in a woman's bathing suit to play, dress up with my daughter. And so she wanted me to dress up like a princess, and I put on a woman's maternity bathing suit, and a guy comes to the door, and we're playing tag, and I'm in this tender moment with my daughter being super dad, and the guy laughs at me, and the way that I told the joke a few years ago was that he actually calls 911 because there's a tranny chasing around a little kid. And I told that joke, and I was in Toronto, and a couple of people that I really respect from the Native Youth Sexual Health Network were in the audience. And that's how I closed the show. That was my closer.
That was your closer.
That was my big closer.
So that was...
That was like my,
that was your exclamation point.
See you next time. This is who I am.
Oh, yeah.
And Lewis is his name. And Lewis...
Lewis is here, actually.
Oh, okay.
For Redwire, too. He used to be
okay.
in Vancouver.
Okay, yeah, so you know Lewis. Yeah. So, came up to me after the show and told me about the use of the word tranny, and in the context in which I used it, why, first of all, why using it is not okay, and why in the context that it was used, why it was hurtful. About a lot of trans people not having relationships with their families, and just the way I used the whole premise was hurtful. And it was an educational moment for me. It was a moment where I really learned something that I did not know. It was a moment where I had to decide if I was going to ever tell that joke again. It was a moment where I had to decide if I needed to say the things in the joke that I said. I love the joke because it's a real thing that happened. But I had to take it apart and find out what was necessary. I still tell the joke. Obviously, I've taken that stuff out of it because there's no need to say that inside of that joke. But in that moment when Krista and Lewis came up to me and shared, I mean, it was emotional. I mean, it was emotional for them. It was difficult for them. It was very difficult for me because I don't want to be on stage and feel like anybody's going to leave the audience feeling bad. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want, never for a minute did I think that joke would put anybody out. But that's because in my circle, I just was not aware. I was not aware of the way I was using that language and the pain that it could bring somebody. So I had to decide if that was going to be something I would ever say or not. And I've never told the joke that way since. And so that moment, some comedians would say, well, tough, it's the joke, it's essential, it's how I wrote it, and it's what's funny about it. But I just decided that my responsibility on stage, my responsibility as a comedian, my blessing and in some ways my burden is my community, and so I have to be accountable to them. And
do you think other comedians that you went to school with or that you toured with have this sense of responsibility? Is this something you're learning right now?
It's something I'm learning. I don't know a lot of comedians that carry that responsibility. I think there's a few that have chosen that responsibility. You mentioned Hari Kondabolu, and there are a handful of others, but again, not many. And I think that's just it's definitely a choice. A lot of comedians, want to hide behind free speech, or they think it's edgy. They're edgy. They're artists. And I think that some of the smartest comedians, Louis C.K., Bill Burr, Patton Oswalt, David Cross, and some of these types, they still say really gross things at times. They say really difficult things to hear. but there's truth in it, and they're masters at the use of language, and they are very careful and clear about what they say, and I'm not there, so I have to be careful, and I want to be careful. And that was a powerful moment for me. It's still a moment it's a moment I'll never forget. I'm sweating. My palms are sweating now just talking about it, because it was a very 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 difficult night, and I was on tour, and I was only in the middle of my tour, and didn't sleep much that night, and I felt like I felt that responsibility in a new way after that, and I appreciate. And why I'm telling the story, I guess, is to say I appreciate that. I appreciate that Louis and Krista came up to me and said what they said, because I do accept that responsibility. You have, at any given night, you have the chance to, as we were saying before, change 400 people's minds, and you have the chance to reach people in a way that I think is powerful, and so you do have to make up your mind, and sometimes like people will come up to you after a show and say, "Oh, bro, you should have said this," or "Why don't you? I'll give you a joke. You could use this. I'll give it to you. Go ahead. You can have it." And there's so much more that goes into it. There's so much work that goes into crafting just a couple of sentences, and it's good work and important work. And the other moment is a tweet that I sent this summer, actually, and it was taken. The tweet what I tweeted was actually a premise that I took out of the new show that I've written that I'm going to be touring in 2015.
What is the show called? Do you have a title for it?
Right now it's called Reconciliation.
It's a working title.
It was a working title. Reconciliation. But and basically the premise is the best way for a racist to get to know you is they have to meet you. So Stephen Harper, the joke is something about like the best we can hope for is Stephen Harper's daughter meets a nice little native boy at the powwow, and they have a baby, and then Stephen Harper has to deal for the rest of his life with this little native baby, and he'll come around because he'll get to know us, and he'll understand us.
Which is what the Spanish and the French did.
Right.
You breed into nations.
Right. And
change things.
So that was the loose premise. This thing comes out about I even forget his name now. What was his name?
Patrick.
No. The guy. Oh God.
Not Gian.
No.
Like who are all the jerks? Let's come
the
out.
guy, the old rocker guy. Is someone on the chat saying it? I know if somebody is familiar.
I totally am blanking right now.
It was just right here. What is his name? The gun guy from the United States. He's the gun guy.
Ted Nugent?
Ted Nugent.
Oh yeah, Ted
Thank
Nugent,
you.
Yeah. Who was being all anti.
Yeah, so Ted Nugent basically
Native
said
American.
Native Americans aren't humans. They're dumber than pigs, and they should be herded up and killed. And so I woke up
and had a response.
And it was 6:30 or 7 in the morning. I woke up and went to the bathroom, then laid in my bed in the hotel, and I just looked at Twitter and I saw this Ted Nugent thing, and I took what Ted Nugent said, and I took that premise about Stephen Harper, his daughter, and I just went bang. And I just tweeted it and used some language that. Some offensive language in the tweet that got me in trouble, and there was a word specifically.
It was like one or two words that were just kind of switched around, yeah.
Yeah, it was a word specifically, the word impregnate, that I used in the tweet that implies forcible. Non-consensual impregnation, non-consensual pregnancy, which has of course been a tool used against Native people sterilization and all of that ugly stuff, which I'm not and wasn't really aware of, and I've never heard the word used that way. So when I used it in the tweet, it was just to say what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows used forcibly impregnate.
I don't think so.
Comedy joke either.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Like I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I've never thought like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not. So yes, it's ugly. Okay.
But it was a misinterpretation of and context.
And in the context.
Yeah.
Now here's me defending myself. I can hear Twitter already.
I read the tweet. I remember reading the tweet.
And in the context, it's not about his daughter. It's about Ted Nugent. But nobody went after Ted Nugent.
They all went after.
Everybody went after me.
Yeah.
And this was 7 a.m, and I tweeted it, and I went about my day. And by the evening time, my phone had just blown up. My Facebook had blown up.
Twitter.
It was just hundreds of people. I was called a rapist. There were blog posts. There was blog posts written about me being a rape supporter and a rape culture initiator and all of this.
Yeah.
So the leap from the language I used, in the way I used it, to the way people deduced kind of who I was as a person fundamentally, it was just such a big leap. But that's what happened. And what I learned there is that absolutely words have power, and that when you're using words to communicate ideas, that you need to, and on Twitter in 140 characters, you need to be careful. Every tweet needs to have a beginning, middle, and an end, and there can't be any gray area. But I read through hundreds of tweets and blog posts and Facebook posts and people tagging me on things on Facebook, and maybe most disappointing was that nobody came to my defense. So I've been doing this for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
And my reputation, I think, precedes me. There's a reason why I've been doing it for 15 years, and nobody really defended me.
Well, there's a problem with social media.
Yes, there is.
There's a really big issue where there's people will give you feedback about all this responsibility you have, especially as a Native comic in our communities. So they'll give you that feedback anyways. You take social media and it takes away responsibility from people actually giving it to you face to face.
Yeah.
Which they probably say in a gentler way. Probably hold your hand and be like, hey, lead you through this. Like your other comments where people actually approached you and said, these are the reasons why I feel hurt.
Yeah.
Instead of just attacking. So.
I understand. I mean, I understand where everybody was coming from with their criticisms of the tweet, 100%. And I understand certainly why people were upset by it. But when the blog posts and things started coming out, then that's when I said, now I have to defend myself, because for the rest of forever, when my daughters choose to Google my name, the word rapist is going to come up on Google.
Or supporter.
So nobody thought about that. Nobody thought about nobody thought about what that actually meant in my life. And what actually happened was I lost a successful pilot that I created for CBC Radio. I lost Unreserved, which is a CBC radio show for CBC Aboriginal. That was the name of my comedy special in 2011. I got fired from that. I was fired from maybe 7 or 8 live gigs this fall. So I've lost.
I didn't realize you were experiencing remnants of that still.
Yeah.
Because you came out right away and kind of apologized and said, by the way, this was the context and that word wasn't really meant.
Yeah, and that was people's choice. Like, people's choice is to, to say, well, we have to distance ourselves from this guy because this is not, we can't be associated with this type of, I guess, social media. But it was taken out of context, and I think it snowballed very quickly, and it turned very ugly very quickly. But what I learned, and it's my responsibility, and I in the apology that I wrote, took responsibility, still take responsibility. I think I've learned a lot from that. That it's actually not helpful to express anger or those types of extreme emotions through this limited medium, and it's not a good.
Takes away body language and cues.
Not a good tool for that.
And timing. Speaking of which, we're going really deep.
Yeah, but that's the responsibility, and
Yeah.
and I think that today in the political situation we're in, the some of the socioeconomic things that we're experiencing today, some of the legacy of all of these things, and the big soup that we're swimming in today, we demand more. And I'm glad that I was held accountable for those things, because I expect more from the people that I respect. And so it was a moment that I learned a lot from. Yeah, it is too important. I don't think that type of language is okay to use. I have 2 daughters. I would never want someone to speak to my daughters that way.
Yeah.
You know. So in the grand scheme of things, I mean, I'm also not 21. I'm 36. I think I'm a little emotionally stubborn sometimes, and I'm edgy. Oh, I'm so edgy. So you know, I learned a lot, and I'm better for both of those experiences. But that's the responsibility we have.
Hard to be a native comedian these days. You're dealing with a lot of things that your forefathers didn't cover. The people that paved the way didn't deal with.
Well, I just wonder about that, because our trickster characters, Nanabuju, Wasaki Chuck, all of these trickster characters did deal with the ugly stuff, and that's where they sat. They sat in the duality of the positive and the negative, and
the yucky,
the ugly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the good stuff is. Wasagi Chuck didn't have Twitter.
You know, he didn't.
So he would have been.
What would you say about Ted Nugent now? What would you say about?
I still want to punch him in the face, but I mean, you know, I don't need to tweet that. I won't tweet that.
Okay.
And yeah, you know. Thank you. But yeah, it's yeah, you just have to be careful. You just have to you just have to watch it. And what I'm, I guess, most proud of today is that I can look back on everything that I've released, whether it's a YouTube video or a comedy special or footage from a live show that somebody just shot and put up. I'm proud of what I've done and what I'm doing, and I'll get better, and I'm trying to get better.
It's hard because all of our mistakes are recorded now throughout time.
Yeah.
Instagram, pictures, Facebook, Twitter. We're all growing beings, and as humans, especially people who are young growing up on it.
Yeah.
You're like, man, all your mistakes are going to be recorded now.
Oh, I just can't. If I had Facebook when I was in high school, oh my goodness.
Everyone would be in trouble.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have daughters growing up in it now. So, how do you deal with this stuff too? Have you tried to deal with it? Funny, wow. So you tried to switch to humor and kind of deal with it?
I talk about it on stage.
Yeah. Do you joke? Do you make the jokes about?
I haven't joked about the Nugent thing yet. Though that bit about Stephen Harper's daughter is in my new act.
Can we hear it?
Well, it doesn't really.
Okay.
It doesn't really work.
Okay.
Because it's actually a long. It is actually a long thing. It's about I don't know more. It's about going to Ottawa. Hello?
Is that me?
Hi.
We actually had a question there. We just wanted to know about the youth empowerment workshops there.
Yeah.
Have you done any?
Yeah. It's all.
Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. It's there's a couple different ways it works. We can either like what I
You say we. Can you? Who are you referring? Is it yourself and somebody else?
well, me and the community. If I'm coming to your community, what we would do, Lena, is set your goals. Like there's no packaged sort of workshop. If it's life skills, if it's a theater workshop, if it's actual hard leadership, sort of leadership proper, then we set the workshop goals, and then I put together the workshop and tailor it to meet the community's goals. But it's all basically up on your feet. It's theater games, theater exercises, getting young people to take healthy risks in front of each other, and to for their peers to see them as they are. So it's about taking off our social masks that we all kind of wear, to be the cool guy or the popular girl or whatever it is, to just allow them to be themselves and to explore leadership and who they are sort of through these really fun exercises. Theater is what saved my life. It gave me a safe place to figure out who I was, and so when I started to look at the life skills programs and things that I deliver through friendship centers and the different youth spaces where I worked, I started to put it together, and I said, wow, these like life skills programs that are on paper to make them fill out questionnaires or fill in the blanks are basically the same types of exercises, but we're up on our feet having fun and laughing and experiential learning, but without the boring paper part. And so I just kind of mixed. I kind of call it life skills on steroids, if you will, because you do go. I mean, I was just in the Northwest Territories, and we only had 4 days together, but we created a community show in 4 days with kids from 8 years old to 18 years old, and we took a community story, and used it to inform the creation of a new community show. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. We try to connect people in the community with the workshop process, so that, because I can't stay there, like I'll leave, I'll go home to Winnipeg, and what's really important is that we connect the people that are already working in the community. So it can be local elders, teachers, people at the health center, whoever's in that First Nation who we might be able to connect with with other services or programs, to look at how we can link things together. And the most successful workshops are always the ones that are linked with elders and youth. And when the elders and youth are linked together, like to get an elder up on stage to perform theater for their community after 3 or 4 days of a workshop is pretty magical. And it's goofy and silly and fun. But our young people and our elders are separate all the time. And they hold separate spaces. And we demand that the youth get their shit together. But we never really tell them what that means, or allow them to tell us what that means. I think most youth are frustrated because they feel like they aren't being heard. And through this process, they have nothing but time to be heard. So that's I think the core part of that workshop.
Do you have a website there that personally
yeah.
that lists any of the workshops, or?
Yeah, we could type it in. What is the?
It's rmcomedy.com.
As a youth, did you want to be heard? Is that why theater kind of saved your life?
I think so. I think it just gave me a place to feel like I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to be someone else. I could be who I want, like who I actually wanted to be, rather than compete with the smart kids or the athletic kids or the different types. I felt comfortable because everybody had to be silly. Nobody had professional acting experience, so we're all on the same level. And you got to see everybody for who they were, You weren't allowed to be cool. in theater class. You had to be yourself.
Yeah, you have to take the cool.
Yeah, you take
the cool jacket off,
Yeah,
and you had to like.
yeah, and I think that's the best part of the theater, is that all you need to be successful is who you are. You don't need to be athletic or good at math or anything else. You just bring yourself to the work, and you can find success.
Okay, well, we are a minute over, but is there any questions? Thank you, Hoishin, for asking about his program. Is there any questions or comments you want to give Ryan at this moment? Tomorrow you are taping a show.
Tomorrow, if you're around the Vancouver area, Kenny Starr, the incredible musician, is recording a pilot for APTN, a 13-episode series, and they're filming the pilot now. And I'm going to be in the pilot episode. So tomorrow they're filming me doing a live stand-up show tomorrow night at 9 o'clock at Platform 7 Coffee House at 2331 Hastings.
Okay.
At 9, and it's free.
It's free, so if you show up,
I would show up
first.
at
8,
seating
7?
No, not 7. 8 though, probably, because the seating is limited, and it sounds like there's a lot of people. And I'm doing a bunch of new material that Vancouver hasn't seen, because I came here like 4 times in a row, and then I'd see all the people the first show. I was like, wow, thanks for coming. And then the second show, mostly the same people. I'm like, oh, you guys have heard this, but laugh anyway. Then the third time, I was like, oh, you guys know my punchlines. So it's a new show, and I hope people like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it'll be aired sometime.
I don't know. No, they're
like fall season.
Yeah,
APTN.
they'll air it once. I think the pilot's been bought, so it'll be on one. The pilot will be on guaranteed, but I don't know if the series will get picked up. But
cool.
I think that's how it works.
But you have a podcast too, so you want to let people know?
Yeah. If people want to listen to some of the other stuff that I do, go to indianandcowboy.com. That's the name of the media company that I started a few months ago. There's a bunch of shows you can listen to over there, or if you just want to hear my show specifically, you can go to redmanlaughing.com.
Yeah.
And that's the name of my podcast. And Red Man Laughing is it's in its 4th season. There's over 100 hours of interviews and different things.
It's hilarious, and you've taped so many live shows too with it.
Yep.
And
live
interview
shows.
people.
Yeah.
And kind of ham it up with the audience.
It's so much fun.
It is really fun. I've
really
been there.
fun.
Well, thanks for sharing this side of Ryan today. I know that people don't get to really see you.
I need a smudge. I feel heavy.
After talking about Ted Nugent,
I shared too much Ted Nugent pain. But thank you. Thanks for the invite. I know we tried to do this months and months and months ago.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you having me here, and thank you to everybody that stopped in.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Thank you, everyone. There's lots of thank yous here, and saying keep making people laugh, Ryan. It's your gift from the creator. So that's
I will try.
And this is our last webinar for the season. We start back up in January, the first week of January. We're going into, again, heavy addiction series, 5-part series. But it's going to be great because it's going to be community members as well as experts, and toolkits will be offered. You can go onto our site. Please have happy holidays. Thank you, Davina and Catherine and James for being here, as well as Leo Walker and Robert Preston for helping with the video conference for the whole year, and First Nations Health Authority and Center for Excellence. And we'll see you all. Safe holidays. Safe.
Hope we mask.